Hey guys, I have a video for you today that's a little unusual because I'm going to talk about a rare historical Walther PP, but I'm also going to talk about a dark time in world history that we could really learn from. Okay, so here's the gun that I want to talk about. Probably most of you have never heard of it. You do see the RRZ and then a property mark. It's kind of corroded. It's not the best condition. I actually did a video about, not this particular gun, but this variation. I did a video about 5 years ago, and I'm actually going to show you a portion of that video because it has also a lot of history that we could learn from. Let's talk about the history of this gun first. RRZ, and by the way, that marking it's probably factory, but it might have been done in an arsenal. They only made, I think they made about 50 of them. There's only about 8 known. Now, when I did the previous video, I said there's only 6 known, but after doing the video, I got reports, I think 2 from Europe. People contacted us and we found 2 more. So there's 8 known RRZ, which stands for, here it is, that's right, the Reich's Broadcasting Center. That was in Berlin, and basically it was a radio station. It was owned by the government, and it basically broadcast, I don't want to compare it to PBS or BBC. It was the official station of Nazi Germany, and they would broadcast propaganda day and night. I've often been asked, or people ponder, how could the Germans be so stupid that they would listen to all these lies about other races and we're the superior race? Well, the truth is we're still pretty stupid because people do listen to lies all the time. They called it propaganda back then. We want you to hate this group of people, so we tell you terrible stories, sensationalized stories about how they cheat and murder, and we need to get rid of those people. Today, however, we have what we call fake news or clickbait, you know, where you see a title and you click it there, and all it does is get you all stirred up, and social media, that people are killing themselves over some of the stories that they read on the internet. So they didn't have the internet back then, but they did have radio, and they did actually make some feature films that were propaganda films to get people to hate other people who are not like me. So one of the lessons that we need to learn from history is to not repeat the same mistakes. Now, let's go back to this gun. It was issued probably to a security guard. Probably the officials, if there was 50 made, there's got to be a number of security guards, but also the broadcasters, the people in charge of the radio station. They had to protect because I guess if they broadcast a story that made people mad, they would have to at least, they wouldn't stop an invasion, but they would stop an intruder who came to hurt them. And again, we see that in our world today, where if somebody says something we don't like, then you hear about somebody, you know, going into a building and shooting up people or just shooting people in the streets far too often. And I hope that we can learn from the mistakes of the past and not repeat them. Here's the RRZ that I featured about 5 years ago. You'll see a much younger me 5 years ago, but this is the one that came in. It's a lot nicer finish, better condition. I swore I'd never sell it because it was so rare, and then after doing the broadcast, somebody money whipped me, so I went ahead and sold it, and haven't had another one since until this one showed up. And it just showed up. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but I did want to talk to all of you about this gun that was issued to a security guard at the radio station in Berlin, the Reich's Radio Center. Now, if you ever come across one, this would not be that hard to fake. So I wanted to let you know there is a known serial range. Here it is. I'll put that here. This is the known serial range. It basically comes in 2 sections. And so, again, somebody could fake this. So you kind of want to get a little more background and examine the marking. I think I said before, it could be factory. It does look a lot like the lettering that you see on the SA guns that are marked here. And of course, there's also the RJ, the RFV, different variations. Now, let's talk about the lesson from history. I don't want to be too preachy or political. That's not the purpose of this. But I do think we need to learn some lessons of the past in terms of sensationalizing the news. It can make my blood boil sometimes when I listen to a story, and then I realize I'm being manipulated, and it makes me even more upset. So my recommendation is, one, don't take things so seriously. And if the news really upsets you, watch or listen to something else. Try to find more than one source of your news, because I find that people get stuck in a rut. They only listen to one idea or opinion. I have friends on the other side of the aisle, we'll call it, and I try to learn from them. I tell me what you're thinking, listen to others, don't interrupt. This is my opinion, but I'd like to hear what you think. And lastly, always assume I could be wrong. So this is what I think, or this is what I see, but of course I could be wrong. If you go into with that attitude with your next conversation, it'll have a much better ending. Now, speaking of endings, here's the rest of that video, and I want to challenge you to watch it till the very end. I think it's very moving. So if you'll watch it to the very end, I think you're left with, and you can put in the comments, what do I need to learn from this lesson in history? Who is the head of the propaganda ministry? That's right, Joseph Goebbels. You see a picture of him here. What's interesting to me is this Aryan race, this master race. A lot of these guys are kind of wimpy dudes. In fact, I'm not going to call him Goebbels anymore. He looks a little squirrely to me. So I'm going to call him Gerbils. So this is Joseph Goebbels, and a little bit about his life. So he knew Hitler. I mean, they were actually good friends all the way back to the early 30s. Here's a picture of his wedding. His wife, this is her second marriage, his first marriage. The boy next to him is his wife's son from his previous marriage, so that would be his stepson. That's Harold. You can see in the picture that he's already in the Hitler Youth. This is 1931. Hitler is not in power yet, but they obviously, you can see they're doing the Nazi salute. And look behind him. Who do you see, that shadowy figure standing behind Goebbels? That is Adolf Hitler, who was his best man. They called him the witness at the wedding, but he was the best man. So Goebbels and Hitler were bros, going all the way back to the early 30s. And then when Hitler came to power, of course, he gives his friend, all his friends got cush jobs. Goebbels was made the head of the propaganda ministry. Now, I already said that was a very important job. They actually pioneered the radio station propaganda idea. It was used a lot in Japan. If you've heard of Tokyo Rose, they would broadcast to the troops, encouraging the soldiers to give up and go home. She was a Japanese American who did the broadcast. In the Axis system, the radio station, they had Axis Sally. Axis Sally would broadcast propaganda.
As one American to another, do you love the British? Well, of course the answer is no.
Now, I'm told that the soldiers actually listened to this and they found it quite humorous, because they'd always put a spin on the war that the Germans were winning everywhere, when of course the Americans knew they weren't. First of all, they had posters wanting to portray Hitler and the Nazis as these wonderful saviors, almost Messiah-like people. And then any of their enemies, especially the Jews, they are always portrayed in a very negative light. They actually made, you're very familiar with all the posters that they made, glorifying the Nazis, putting down their enemies. But they also made full-length movies, big, huge productions, again, glorifying the German people and making their enemies look foolish. So they get the people to get their head around the idea that we are the master race, we're better than everybody else. And before they invade a country, they just inundate you with propaganda. So for example, in 1939, before they invaded Poland, there was not a firing war until 1939. They just walked into countries and took over. A lot of propaganda to do that. They would say, well, this is really our land and here's why. But the first time they had a shooting war, a violent war, was when they invaded Poland. Now, for weeks and months before they invaded Poland, they actually broadcast over the radio that the German people in Poland were being bullied, children were being abused. They portrayed the Polish people as terrible people. and that these poor, innocent Germans were being persecuted, and it gets everybody all upset. And the night they invaded, they actually broadcast that a Polish patrol of soldiers had crossed the border into Germany, and that was the final straw. We had to go in and stop the abuse of the Polish people. Of course, that was all a big lie, but that's part of the propaganda, and you wonder, how did the German people put up with this stuff? Well, they really believe that they're being persecuted, and we're this strong nation, and we shouldn't put up with this crap anymore. So they invaded Poland, and as you know, they did a lot of horrific things to the people. But throughout the war, they continued to broadcast this propaganda. Now, what happened to Goebbels? We've already said, he was in charge of this, and take a look at his family. Beautiful children, and what a shame. He was actually with Hitler at the end. He was in the bunker. Hitler killed himself a day before Goebbels killed himself. He actually killed his entire family. I've thought a lot about this in preparation for this video as I look at these kids. It's one thing to believe in ideology as an adult and say, you know what, and in fact his wife actually wrote out a suicide note where she said, I can't imagine living in a world without Hitler. I don't want to live in a world without Hitler. So she chose to kill herself. They literally drank the Kool-Aid. They took poison. But before they did, they poisoned all of their kids. There's a picture here, and Harold's actually in it. Harold is the stepson. That was actually photoshopped. He was not in the bunker. He was serving in the Luftwaffe, and he survived the war. He actually was a West German businessman after the war. He survived the war. He was the only one who survived. But everybody else in the picture, the kids were poisoned, and then Mr. and Mrs. Goebbels killed themselves. Now imagine being the propaganda minister, where you know that everything you've been saying is a lie. Meaning he gets the reports from the Eastern Front or the Western Front and saying that we're in retreat everywhere, we're losing the war, all hope is lost. And he somehow spins that into the glorious German people are going to be victorious. He knows it's a lie, and he chooses to kill his children and then kill himself. That's drinking the Kool-Aid. I thought it would be good to end with the actual words from the suicide note that I found online from Magna Goebbels. People sometimes ask me, why do you do so many videos about the Nazis? I think it's good to repeat what I've said before, that our goal is to honor the American veterans who sacrificed their lives, the men and women who fought this Nazi ideology and defeated it. If we don't study the past, we're liable to repeat it.
My beloved son, by now we have been in the Fuhrer bunker for 6 days already. Daddy, your 6 little siblings, and I, for the sake of giving our National Socialistic lives the only possible honorable end, you shall know that I stayed here against Daddy's will, and that even on last Sunday the Fuhrer wanted me to get out. You know your mother, we have the same blood. For me, there was no wavering. Our glorious idea is ruined, and with it everything beautiful and marvelous that I have ever known in my life. The world that comes after the Fuhrer and National Socialism is not any longer worth living, and therefore I took the children with me. For they are too good for the life that would follow, and a merciful God will understand me when I give them the salvation. The children are wonderful. There never is a word of complaint nor crying. The impacts are shaking the bunker. The elder kids cover the younger ones. Their presence is a blessing, and they are making the Fuhrer smile once in a while. May God help that I have the strength to perform the last and the hardest. We have only one goal left, loyalty to the Fuhrer, even in death. Harold, my dear son, I want to give you what I learned in life. Be loyal. Loyal to yourself, loyal to the people, and loyal to your country. Be proud of us and try to keep us in dear memory.